So psychological event or a resurfacing of an old psychological pattern that has negative emotions attached to it is going to then create a cascade into your neurological system, which is then going to imprint on your brain. And that is then going to cascade to the correlating organs. And depending on what you're experiencing,
welcome to Integrative You Radio, hosted by Dr. Nick Carruthers and yours truly, Dr. Nicole Rivera. This is the place where you become limitless. We are covering the latest and greatest topics, of course, in a disruptive fashion, around integrative medicine, mental health, and human behavior. We are also covering how those topics affect the human and family dynamics. We will be sprinkling in some truth bombs for our healthpreneurs so they can join us in our mission to evolve healthcare. If you are health curious and growth focused, you are in the right place. But buckle up, because this is real, this is raw, and this is disruptive. This is Integrative You Radio.
what is up, my friends? Dr. Nicole here, back with another episode of Integrative You Radio. Snapping over here. Had a little too much espresso, so I'm really feeling it. But for those of you that are new here, Dr. Nick, my husband, and I have been running an integrative practice for, 13 years, very long time. But we've always had this, it started with interest and then it moved into a focus of our clinical care when it came to the mind. And part of this stemmed from one, working with people from a biochemical and physical perspective. So working with them all through natural modalities. So this could be detox therapies. This could have been physical therapy, chiropractic, lymphatic drainage, supplementation, homeopathics, etc., which are all mainly focused on the physical body as well as the biochemical body. And you see people get results, and then you see others don't. And naturally, if you a good practitioner or you don't really want to just settle for the idea that, oh, this person wasn't compliant, or maybe this is not the best route for them. And you take an interest in asking, what else is going on here? What am I missing? You start to run up on the idea there's this missing link. There's this elephant in the room. And when you start asking better questions, almost 100% of the time, like 99.9% of the time, there was something that happened when someone started to experience minor symptoms, a lot of symptoms, a cascade of symptoms, but there was some event. And some of it was something happened, and that could have been some type of loss, fear, rejection, or sometimes it is the resurfacing of something from the past that had an extreme effect on us, a challenge that really knocked us down. And so things like that happen all the time. A lot of us have experienced resurfacing. We go through periods of time when we're a young child that, maybe there's a lot of fear or there's a lot of uncertainty, or we don't always feel overly safe. And this could be because, our family is having financial difficulties. And then, we move on with our lives. And then we go to college, we get our own job, and then we get fired or we get laid off. And then it's like, whoo, there's that flood, that memory. And it's like, oh my God, is it happening again? And you start to have a resurfacing of all of the emotions of fear and uncertainty and scarcity and what ifs, and you get the drill. And so I'm 13 years into doing this work, and I've been exposed to so many different things that have helped me to understand the mental and emotional layers to symptoms, disease, chronic illness, cancers, etc. And I just love learning. I absolutely am fascinated by the human mind, the human body, the human experience. I've always loved people. I've always worked in industries where I got to be exposed to all different types of people. And it's so fascinating what people like, what their values are, what makes them tick, what makes them mad, what makes them, motivated, inspired. It's just so interesting how different we all are. And if we could let go of our fucking judgment of each other, there's so much we can learn from each other. But that's a derail. You guys know that's my drill. I always derail. So anyway, in my commitment to learning and evolving in this in this industry, in the healthcare space, I have recently been exposed to an individual that created something called Germanic New Medicine. So I have to give a shout out to my friend Emily, who introduced me to this. It was just it was a really, really amazing introduction. And I say this because I've always loved the science and the neurology. So the neuroscience of symptoms and behaviors. And a lot of the work that I've been exposed to, a lot of it has been about energy. And energy is not something that you can see with the physical eye. And so it's always been a bit of a challenge for people to understand and even for my brain to wrap around. I know the power of it. I know how it works. I've experienced it, but I think it's really cool when you can actually see these corresponding changes. And so essentially in the Germanic New Medicine, he was actually an oncologist who had a very, very intense loss of his son. And in that event, he ended up with testicular cancer very shortly after. And being a very open-minded, intelligent practitioner, he said, interesting correlation. Interesting that I had one of the most traumatic things, or the most traumatic emotional event of my life, where I have suffered tremendous heartbreak and loss. And now I am a cancer patient, where he was, the cancer doctor. And he wanted to understand, because then he started asking better questions to his patients. And he found that almost all of them, that I think his statistic is actually like 99.9%, that they all had something happen before they were diagnosed with cancer. And it was all different types of events, conflicts, challenges, emotional adversities. It wasn't the same. And so he went on to study this in depth. He actually ended up getting in a lot of trouble because he was going completely against the conventional medicine narrative, because he was a oncologist, he was conventional medicine doctor, and they were just like, if you keep pushing the envelope here, we're going to take your license, because we need you to prescribe drugs and shut your mouth, essentially. And if you guys don't think that that's the reality of what still stands today, it fucking is. You don't mess with profits in that industry. And so for people like myself, we have really gone against the grain to help others, and it's gotten us into trouble. That's for sure. And in addition to that is most people are like, what you're saying is voodoo and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, listen, if I could just stay in the conventional model and not see through the cracks, my life would have been a lot easier. But you can't unsee what you see. You also can't help but see specific things when you're a practicing practitioner. And if you are really interested in helping people, you got to do what's right. And that's really all that it comes down to. So yeah, if people want to listen to this podcast and say I'm fucking crazy, I don't care. I really authentically don't. So anyway, primarily what this practitioner found through like so many case studies, I don't know the exact statistic, but it's like in the tens of thousands. It might be closer to 100,000. But he found that there was a direct correlation to the psyche, the physical body, and the brain. And this is where it got really, really interesting, because he found that there was a direct event on the psyche, a traumatic event, a high magnitude emotional event, a loss, a fear, shame, a guilt, a grief, etc. And that then created a change in the neurological system, in the brain. So he calls them hammer focus. And literally, he used to do brain scans. So he could actually look at a brain scan and tell you exactly what the conflict of the individual was, which we're going to talk about more, and the correlated organs that were diseased or dysfunctioning. And he didn't know anything. He didn't need to know anything about you. He could just look at the brain scan and say, this is what's going on. This is what happened. And this is what's going on in the physical body. Like that to me, I was like, I'm all ears. I want to understand everything. And it makes sense because these events, we all have different strategies of how to move through them. We can move through them by disassociating, suppressing, blocking it out of our memory, which is essentially disassociating. But it doesn't mean that the scar doesn't last. And what he's primarily finding is that there was an actual change in the brain, an actual change in the neurology. And that can go through its own healing without specific intervention in some cases where someone has the ability to forgive, or they find that it wasn't solely just a bad thing. It wasn't solely a challenge, but there was actually some great things that came out of it. So it's like you lose the love of your life, but then you end up falling in love again, and you have this beautiful life. Like things like this can happen, which can then change the neurology, which can then heal the physical body. So essentially it was a psychological event to change in the brain to then affect the corresponding organs. And what he found is that in extreme situations and unresolved situations, that it wouldn't just be that this organ would start to dysfunction, it would be a full-blown cancer development in that organ. And so when you're trying to wrap your head around like what I'm saying, here's a couple of really interesting examples, because we've all said things like this, different idioms, you can call them, is this guy is breathing down my neck, or I can't do this anymore. I feel like I just need to give up. I was scared to death. I can't swallow this information. And you say things like this at different times in your life, and you think like it's just a temporary thing. But if there is such a strong emotional charge behind why you're saying it and what's going on, this can actually then correlate to a very specific conflict that creates a very specific change in your brain and your neurology, which is then correlates to a very specific organ. Because obviously, I think most of us realize our brain is the control center of all of our organs. So your brain is not independent of your organs. It's a direct connection. It's the messenger. It's the control center. So what he did was he was able to correlate what the conflict was. So an example is, I was scared to death is a shock, fear, conflict. Shock, fear, conflict, and where that manifests in the brain is directly correlated to the throat. And for those of you that are practitioners here, I don't know about you, but even at my original degree is as a chiropractor, and I remember I was learning embryology, and we were all like, why the fuck is this part of our curriculum? And you can make logical sense of it, is just the embryological tissues and how that correlates to the development of organs and tissues and neurology and everything later on. But it doesn't always make sense why we're learning, because that was a very big part of our curriculum in the first year of school. And it was difficult. It was a very, very difficult subject. And so when he talks about the neurological changes that happen from these psychological conflicts, the correlation to the organ actually all goes back to embryology. It all goes back to, what organs were derived from the mesoderm or the ectoderm. So this is definitely a dorky scientific point, but I thought it was really fascinating because I was like, oh, that's maybe one of the reasons why I learned this. So it pieced it all together for me. But, some of the others was, I can't take this anymore. This is a self-esteem conflict, which actually correlates to your low back and your hip and your SI joint. I couldn't swallow the information. I couldn't digest the information. This is something that he calls a chunk conflict, which could be correlated to the throat, but also could be correlated to the stomach. I lost face. This could be more like, I don't know who I am anymore. I lost my identity. Like my identity was wrapped up in this business that I built. And this could be a separation conflict if you lose that business. And now you're starting to actually have facial pain or trigeminal nerve pain, cluster headaches, breathing down my neck. This is correlated to fear. This could correlate to different issues in the neck. It could also correlate to different issues in the retina of the eye. One of the others is he came for me. He was out for blood. She was out for blood. When you feel personally attacked, this is a territorial anger conflict. And this is correlated to your liver, gallbladder, bile ducts. Do you know how many people I work with that have issues in their liver, gallbladder, bile ducts? I'm not telling you that they came to me saying, I have fatty liver, I have gallstones, I have, cancer or cirrhosis. No, these are people that are just suffering with different things. A lot of women suffering with hormonal issues, people suffering with digestive issues, and it goes back to liver, gallbladder, bile duct dysfunction. And when you think about even our experience in 2020 with COVID, what was the primary emotion that we were all feeling? We were feeling fear. And when you think about the chronic the chronic diagnosis, but also the epidemic of anxiety. What is anxiety rooted in? It's rooted in fear. So fear is a driving emotion for so many people. And when we have an event that is our first experience with extreme fear, it's very easy for that to come back up because there are so many external triggers in our current environment. There is fear that is instilled in the media. There is fear instilled in, even your workplace, is if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. And then how are you going to, pay for this and feed your kids? Like, there's fear in the media. There's fear even in religion, is if you do this, you're a sinner, you're going to hell. There's fear everywhere around us. And even one of the craziest things that you don't notice until you become a parent is, for me, we have a very specific way that we go about raising our child, and we're not a fear-driven household. And we know that, he might get hurt sometimes. Of course, we're never going to put him in a position that he's going to get hurt, but we are very big on explore your body, explore the boundaries of what you can do. But we're going to actually teach you how to do it safely. You want to climb up the stairs as a 1.5-year-old? We're going to teach you how to climb down the stairs. Like, you want to jump over crazy shit? You want to, like parkour on the couch? That's fine. We're going to teach you how to do it the right way. Instead of like, we didn't baby gate, we didn't, block everything off saying, oh, no, 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 we're so scared you're going to get hurt. We went about it in a little bit different of a way, but it's still, to this day, our son is a little over 3 now. When we're out, it was worse in the US. It's not as bad in Italy, but people, like, he'll start running, or like the other day we were at a restaurant and the restaurant was on the water. And there's a little ramp to the water, to the dock, that is literally connected to where the tables are. And it's because a lot of people take boats, park them, and that's how they come to the restaurant. And so he started running down the little ramp to the dock, and like 3 people started running after him. None of those people were me or my husband, because we know that he's not going to jump in the water. And even if he did jump in the water, we'll jump in after him and get him. Or the water is even shallow and he knows how to swim. So like, you want to jump in the water, bro, you're going to learn the lesson. The water's cold as shit right now. Like, that's the way that we think about it. But there were so many people running after him, like he was going to die. And it's just, there's so much, people operate that way because we've been taught to operate that way. There's a lot of fear that is built into our psyche, for a variety of different reasons, is the point that I'm making. And so this is definitely one of the driving forces as to why there is so much liver disease, which then creates hormonal issues, especially in females, creates a lot of gut issues in both genders, all genders. So yeah, so this is a huge thing that really needs to be addressed in the healing process. This isn't about just doing liver detoxification and taking supplements for the liver, or doing liver flushes by drinking a concoction of all of these different things. This is about doing that maybe as one aspect, but then also looking at how much is fear controlling this person's reality. And so the whole point of why I wanted to talk about this is because I want people to understand that your symptoms are not just physical. They're always going to have a psychological component because of everything that we talked about here. So, psychological event or a resurfacing of an old psychological pattern that has negative emotions attached to it is going to then create a cascade into your neurological system, which is then going to imprint on your brain, and that is then going to cascade to the correlating organs. And depending on what you're experiencing, that is going to be correlated to a very specific conflict. If it's fear conflict, if it's self esteem conflict, if it's a territory conflict, that is what's going to then dictate what organs are the most affected. Also, what I want to say is that some of you have potentially embarked on healing your physical body. Maybe you've gone natural route, maybe you've had, surgical intervention. It really doesn't matter. But in the event that you start to work on an organ, you can have the reverse happen. So, if that organ is directly correlated to a part of your brain which is tied back to a belief system or a conflict, you can have an emotional response, which you'll probably presume as negative, when you start to heal or address or detoxify that organ. You know how many people I've worked with when we start working on their liver that they have like anger outbursts. And what's great is we're working on that layer. We're working on it through our human behavior work and our biointegration technique. But a lot of other times, people don't know what the fuck's going on. They don't like, so clarity is step one for the person to say, oh my God, that makes sense. I had a lot of anger as a kid. I thought I worked through it, but now that we're working on my liver, it makes sense why this is coming out and this is releasing. And they can make appropriate decisions. They can say, tell their husband or their wife and be like, listen, I just want to let you know it ain't personal. I'm going through some shit because I'm working on this organ, and things might be coming out that are old or like don't make logical sense. They could also, make sure that at work they're prefacing to their coworkers or thinking twice before they send a reactive email out. So it allows them to be a little bit more empowered and not feel totally controlled by this emotion, but then of course being able to work through that as well. This is really, really common. When we had our practice in Belmar in New Jersey, you know, we had an avenue, our practice, that was just physical work. It was just chiropractic, physical therapy, sound wave therapy. We had a bunch of different devices that we used. These were people coming in, they're like, I'm not interested in doing blood work. I'm not interested in, taking a deeper dive. I have pain. I need you to fix it. This is something that, we're like, okay, well, we're really good at helping people with pain. So, and we have the tools, let's do it. And you would see some people would have emotional reactions, like they would start to detox. They would be calling us like flipping out, oh, what did you do to my knee and this and that. And it had nothing to do with their, oh, I was a basketball player and that's why my knees are jacked up. It's like your knees are correlated to something completely different. You got your knees worked on. Now there's a bunch of things that are coming to the surface. We don't know enough about you to help you work through it. Trust me, in the beginning, we didn't even know anything about this. So I remember a guy, he got his knees worked on and he like lost his shit by the end of the session. And we're just like, what just happened? We're like, did he get a phone call? Like, did he, what happened? Because he just like, he lost his mind. And then it turned out that he actually had a lot of problems and he let us do testing on him. And it turned out he had Lyme disease, which has its a whole lot of layers when it comes to what we're talking about today for the psychological layers. So that could definitely be another podcast, is talking about the conflict associated with chronic Lyme, because I know that there are people that are debilitated by chronic Lyme, but chronic Lyme is very multifaceted, and there is actually a deep-rooted correlation as to why an organism like Lyme can take over the body and create such severe breakdown. All right, guys. So the moral of the story is that one, if you have tried to heal and no one has talked to you about the psychological and the neurological ramifications of why you have physical issues in your organs, that's problem number one. And if you are still seeking to resolve what you have going on and to do the deeper work in order to really not just resolve your physical symptoms, but make your body and your mind healthier as a whole so that you could actually start living your life and not be trapped by old shit that's probably in your subconscious that's fucking up your brain and messing up your organs. Hey, we're here for you because that is what we do. And our goal for anybody that we work with is, of course, to have great data to get to the root cause. But this is also about how do we help you reclaim your health, up level your mental health so that you can live the life that you want. You know, you can create that 2.0 version of your life where you have and can be who you want to be. All right, guys, until next time.
We thank you so much for being an avid listener of Integrative You Radio, formerly known as Integrative Wellness Radio. We appreciate all of your support. We love your comments. Please visit us on social media as well as our website to see all of the fun things happening behind the scenes and the new amazing content and courses that is being rolled out on a monthly basis. We hope to see you there.